overall, but also much quicker and much more efficient. And not only that, but what this technique does is it democratizes the creative process throughout your organization. So you no longer need, just the engineers or just the product people to be thinking about it. Actually, everybody can participate. And so in that sense, it's very democratic. And so the idea here, basically, I'm going to present to you a set of ideation templates. Ideation because it's about ideas. Templates because these are kind of rules. These are sort of templates. And these templates are based on research that looks at past successful innovations and says, okay, if I look at these mousetraps, what made these mousetraps successful? Okay, and I just realized that I don't see the chat, so maybe Carol, maybe you monitor the chat for me and then you interrupt me if you see a question. Yeah. All right. And so you look at past successful innovations. You said, what makes this mousetrap like? Could be a special kind of trap. Distill it into a rule. That becomes a template. And then what you do is you apply that rule to existing services, products, market realities, whatever it is. You apply that rule and you create, and that generates an idea for you. Okay. And so that's how you sort of build your pool of ideas. Now, does it stop there? No, it doesn't stop there. The next thing you do is you say, okay, I have this set of ideas. Now, which one of these is feasible and desirable? And to be able to make that judgment, then I have to do my work of understanding the customer journey, customer needs, segmentation, and so on and so forth. Okay, so all this is going to do is it's going to allow you to generate ideas. But you still have to apply your business judgment onto whether or not that idea is actually an idea that solves a problem. And many of you have heard about design thinking. Yes? Nod if you've heard about design thinking. Yeah. And so design thinking, it was actually born here in the D School at Stanford, and they sort of sell themselves as like a technique to come up with ideas. In fact, what I'll argue is that it's not a good technique to come up with ideas. What it is it's a really good technique to be able to understand what customers are feeling and thinking, right? Because it really is a structured way of perspective taking. And in fact, if we were naturally empathetic as a species, then we wouldn't need design thinking. But because we're not naturally empathetic as a species, then we need a structured process to do it for us. But so as you think about solving problems in your companies, you should think about, okay, I want to use design thinking techniques in order to be able to really deeply figure out what consumer needs are. And then I want to use techniques like I'm going to show you today in order to be able to come up with candidate solutions for those problems. And then, and that's where your sort of business acumen comes in, is to be able to create a match between the product ideas you came up with and the needs that are out there in the market. Okay, so let's get started with the first template. So Twitter and Snapchat, do they meet a big customer need? Are these valuable companies? Yes or no? Yeah, that's a rhetorical question. If you're not moving your head, then it's a problem. You should say yes. All of us would be thrilled. We can be cynical about Snapchat, and we can be cynical about how the T in Twitter stands for Trump. But we can be cynical, but the bottom line is these companies have really generated an enormous amount of value, and all of us would kill to be a founder of one of them. And honestly, all the, Antoine and crew would be thrilled if any of you, some of you, one of you becomes, builds a company that big. So the question I have for you is, how, what's similar about these companies? So just say it out. Just say it out loud. So I'm gonna. I want names. Carol, just call on people. I just want similarities.
Okay then. Let's see.
Just call a name. Don't worry about thinking about who.
Okay, Mateus from Gaivota.
Okay.
Hey folks, I'm not social media user, but I'm not being user. The similar is like being focused on technology. And
okay, through technology companies. Great. Yeah. What else? Fast. Come on, people. I just don't know. I'm going to call on Scott just because I can. Scott, I'm going to unmute you. I can't unmute you.
I 1 second.
Oh, all right. Maybe I kept muting him. Scott, what's similar about these companies? Okay, you're talking and we can't hear you. He's muted.
They are social networks.
Social networks, fantastic. So we just saw Scott moving his lips, but we didn't hear him say anything. Social networks, without a doubt. What's next?
I'll go.
Extremely easy. Oh,
Extremely easy. Great. What else?
They were
The content comes from the user. They don't create
User-generated content. Absolutely. Next.
they're simplifications of existing models.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Greg Bateman. What simplification of what?
So they took the good stuff from maybe Facebook and they removed all the garbage.
Interesting what you're saying. So what you're saying is that Twitter and Snapchat are just Facebook minus, right? So what's Twitter? Twitter is just Facebook, but you can only write 140 characters. You can't write these like long rants or all these people that write ode to their children. Oh, you know, Greg, when you were born, you made me a mom and I'm so happy for you and all this stuff. And you're such an amazing kid. And it turns out Greg just turned a year old and he can't read. So like that kind of thing, cut it down, right? We could have all just stopped at 140 characters. Snapchat would be like, I'm posting a picture on Facebook. I'm counting 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi. Remove it. That's just Snapchat, right? But the fact of the matter is that people don't do it that way, right? So they write whatever they want on Facebook and they post forever on Facebook, you know, pictures. And so what these companies did is they generated an enormous amount of value by taking something that exists and actually reducing it. They subtracted functionalities and created value by subtracting functionalities. Okay, and that's going to be our first example of a template. Normally, what's counterintuitive about this is we always think about, okay, how do we add value? Right? We want to have a product that adds value to the consumer. And so your natural inclination when you think about adding value is adding features, adding things, adding capabilities, adding opportunities of usage, and so on and so forth. And what you see in the Twitter and Snap example is that you can actually add an enormous amount of value. In fact, you can almost create a new use case by removing something as opposed to by adding. Okay? What's missing here? Just say it.
Light.
Light, right? So how does this change the restaurant going experience? Just somebody say it.
It uses your other senses.
Yeah. Uses your other senses, exactly right. So don't worry about the overtalk. We'll work it out. It's no big deal. When you eat, it's as much an olfactory and visual. You know, it's a gustatory, olfactory, and visual experience. Right? And so if I remove one of those senses, now what it does is it heightens the olfactory and the gustatory. So I'm actually creating a new experience. I'm adding value by subtracting not something that's just incidental and small. I'm subtracting something that's a basic element of a product. Right? If you think about, I don't know if you remember Indiana Jones, many of you are too young to even be aware that there was a character named Indiana Jones. But there was a guy named Indiana Jones. He was an explorer, and there's a very famous scene in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom when he reaches into the heart and like they pull out the heart. And so the idea in subtraction is to have the courage to remove what's elemental in a product, right? And create something new. All right, what's missing here? So reading comprehension question.
So
everybody should be able to get this. Laces, that's right. Okay, these are Converse Chucks. Converse Chucks have been, it's been the same shoe basically since 1950. There's not a lot of innovation you can put into the shoe. It's the cheapest form of rubber with some canvas and some holes. Okay, but so what they did is they actually took something that's elemental to the shoe, which was the laces. They're so much part of the look, remove those laces, create a different kind of look, a different kind of style. I remove something, I create something new. By the way, most of you work on cloud, right? What's cloud? Cloud is just subtraction. You just removed something. It's a hard drive without a physical hard drive, right? What's missing here? Don't tell me muscle.
Copies.
Branding.
The brand, yeah.
That's right. So Uniqlo brands itself by saying that their positioning is, hey, what matters is what's inside, not what's on your shirt. And they remove any signal of the brand, right? And they create value that way. They create a new kind of positioning by actually removing something in an industry fashion where your symbol or your brand is what you know is so defining of what your value is. You heard of this company? Yes?
Yeah.
I don't see nodding. I'm surprised. What's Nubank? Nubank is just a bank without sucursales, branches. It's just a bank with no buildings. That's all it is. At the end of the day, that's the key to the innovation. And I'm sure they did this and that and the purple and the branding and blah, blah, blah. You could do all that stuff. At the end of the day, what makes this unique and unique in the Brazilian market in particular is the fact that it's subtracted what is otherwise a basic fundamental element of Brazilian banking, which is the branch. Okay, that we all know and have issues with. All right, what's missing here? Screen.
And buttons.
How does that change? How does that change the experience of consuming my iPod?
It's simpler.
It
enhances my audio experience.
It's
lighter and smaller.
Yeah, it's simpler. It's simpler without a doubt. What does it do? In what way does it change my experience in addition to the simplicity?
You don't know what's
I
next.
can't choose.
Yeah.
You don't know what's next. So then what do you get when you don't know what's next?
Surprise.
Serendipity.
Surprise and serendipity. If you ever imagine what's coming, dopamine, somebody writes. And so if you ever notice, like when you have your song, your favorite song, you put it on your playlist and it comes on, it's nice, right? It's nice. But if it comes on the radio, your favorite song, then it totally jacks you up. Why is that? It's your favorite song. It doesn't, like you put it on your list. But what happens is when you don't expect it, right, it becomes that much more exciting, right? And so what they've done here, what Apple did here, which is just, don't underestimate the utter brilliance of what they did with this product. You think about it and you're like, oh yeah, it's nice because it's convenient because it can fit in my pocket better, or it's lighter or whatever. No, what's brilliant about this product is that they created a brand new emotional experience. And they created that emotional experience by actually removing something. Okay? And so all of you make products and you're dying to create a product that will elicit, an epsilon emotional response in your customers. Because if you do, that's when you get value exchange, right? These guys created that by actually removing something. Okay, removing something that's at the heart of what the product is. Because how can you conceive of a music player where you don't know what music is playing? Right? So subtraction. Next, the internet. You find all kinds of crazy products on the internet. Turns out shovels are coming back, but here is just one example of a shovel. All right. So now, this is a subtraction template. In the subtraction template, what we do is we remove an essential component. Okay, sometimes we remove that essential component and replace it with something else, and we'll get into that discussion. But what we're going to do is we're going to remove an essential component. So I don't know how many of you remember reading The Little Prince, but The Little Prince, it was kind of like the super, Antoine for sure remembers because he's French. And so in fact, Antoine, are you named after Antoine de Saint-Exupéry?
I am not.
You should say yes, because it makes you sound much more literary.
Yeah, I wish I were that literary, but no. Unfortunately, I am. It's from a family. It's generations of my family. That's all.
Oh, I see. So you're an aristocrat.
I am. Yes.
You're not literary. So basically, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry said perfection is finally attained not when there's no longer anything to add, but when there's no longer anything to take away. And that's the idea. And if you look at actually product adoption, what you find is that the more complex a product, the less likely it is to be adopted. And here's the tricky part for you as entrepreneurs when it comes to that issue of complexity, is that remember, there's a massive asymmetry between you and your customers. What looks simple to you is complicated to them. right? And so the discipline that it takes to simplify, and subtract is something you have to force yourself to do. Because to you, things are obvious. To them, they're not obvious. Okay, the other one-liner that helps me remember that is I had this dean at Columbia. In the beginning of my career, I spent 8 years at Columbia. I had a dean at Columbia who was he was an assistant dean. He was a total buffoon. He said one smart thing in the 8 years that I was there, and that was something that he quoted someone else. So we're going to give him only partial credit, but it's something that stuck with me nonetheless. He said, it was about teaching. He said, remember, they're hearing it for the first time. Which is a really, really interesting thing, because basically what you're doing is you need to communicate a message to someone who's never heard it. And the same thing is true about your products. You need to communicate your product to someone who this is the first time they're seeing it, right? And so the threshold of complexity is very, very different for them than it is for you. And if you're an engineer, you're like, you are sometimes genetically incapable of understanding that some people can't understand that problem like you understand the problem. Okay, and so it's really, really important. Subtraction can help you reduce that complexity. So what I want to do now is the following. I want us to, how are we doing on time? Oh, we're doing horribly on time. So we're not going to practice yet. We're going to see if we have time to practice later. But here's what I would have had you do. We would have picked an industry, and you would have done the following. You would have written down all the, let's think about this for your own product. Let me contextualize this for you in your own product. Okay, so think about all the things that you control, okay, in your product. So I know Lucas is in Ravello. They have an upskilling kind of service, right? And so all the things he does, so he can give, he creates the interface for the course content. In some cases, he might create the course content, you know, whatever features he has in his product that he makes. You make a list of all those features, all those things that you manufacture that you control. And then what you do is you literally remove one and see what it does. Remove another one, see what it does. Remove a third one, see what it does. Okay. So for instance, imagine Ravello was an upskilling company that creates its own content. Okay. It's a platform where people come to do their upskilling. Okay. And they were in a business where they created their own content. Right? If I subtracted out their content, now what I've done is I've created a marketplace where content providers and content seekers can meet. You understand that? You see the difference? In one case, he's an upskilling company. I remove something. Now he's a marketplace. Okay, now those are major strategic changes, but you can think also about smaller things that you could subtract. So what I want you to do as homework is to go create that list of all these all these components that you create, and think about what happens when you remove them. Okay, and what kind of ideas that generates for you. Next template is called the task unification template. In the task unification template, we give something a second job. Okay, so for instance, our old friend, the shovel. It's not just a shovel, it's also a frying pan. All right? You may be familiar with the task unification template whenever you use a CAPTCHA. What does a CAPTCHA do? Okay, what a CAPTCHA does is it confirms that you're a human being. And if it confirms that you're a human being, it basically enables e-commerce to happen securely. But the other thing a CAPTCHA does is it teaches neural networks how to identify printed content. Two jobs, one, and it does it by giving a task that only people can fulfill. Right? Massively innovative. What is it? It's simply, hey, let me give something a second job. Right? This CAPTCHA is doing two jobs. Here's another example of two jobs. Whoops. If you wanna light a fire, what do you need? You need a fire starter, you need a log, and you need paper. Okay, the problem with that is, the problem with fire starter is very unsafe. Okay, and the paper can fly away. So Duraflame created this log that has in it basically the fire starter material, and it has a wrapper, and all you do is you put it in your fireplace and you light the wrapper. Two jobs, one resource, right? And what that does is be able to enhance the safety of lighting a fire in your home, which is different than lighting your home on fire, yeah? All right, here's another more dramatic example, I should say, is I'm already putting down a road. if I'm putting down a road, why don't I put pipes in that road? Those pipes will cool in the winter and heat in the summer, and then I can use that temperature that I've generated to be able to heat and cool adjacent buildings in opposite seasons, right? So now the road has two jobs. It's a radiator air conditioning unit as well as being a road that cars drive on. Oh, why doesn't this do this? All right, a big problem in the developing world is access to electricity. Okay, a problem that you don't have in the developing world is access to children who want to play. These are toys that have a gyroscope in them that basically harnesses the energy from the movement. And that energy can then be used to light a small lamp. Okay, so basically the ball has two jobs. It's both a toy and a power plant. Okay, and you see this informally happening all around you once you understand what these templates are. Now, I don't recommend you do this because you have to have a back that's shaped in a very specific way, but this is an example of task unification. It's both a railing and a bed. This is actually a version of it that's a real product. Imagine I told you, hey, I want you to give homeless people a dignified sleep. Think about that. I want you to solve that problem. What most people would do is they'd say, okay, like I'll build more homeless shelters. That's one possibility. The more enterprising among you would say, I'm creating an Airbnb marketplace for homeless housing. All right. Sounds really fancy, not going to work, but you know, kind of reasonable to say nonetheless. Or what I can do is I can create street signs, and these are street signs in India that have two functions. It's a street sign by day, and at night you just turn it down and it's a bed. And now this homeless person can have a dignified sleep because they don't have to sleep on the ground. Okay, super innovative, solves a massive problem, very simple application of a rule. That's the point, is that when you apply a rule, and when you apply a rule, the rule almost spits out the answers for you. You don't have to sit there and think and think and think. The challenge is just, let me just add up a bunch of, make a list of components and then move those components around. All right, this is one of my favorite examples. This is called the baby mop. And so this is, again, 2 tasks, 1 resource. You know, Jimmy he's crawling anyway. Why not clean the floors? And here we go. Oops. Baby mop, the onesie that cleans your floors. Top 5 reasons you need a baby mop. 1, teach your baby a strong work ethic early on in their life. 2, your baby will learn not to drop and waste food. 3, baby will get a nice workout, burn off energy, and do muscle toning and sleep better. 4, not having to clean your floors saves you time so you can spend it doing things you enjoy. 5, save lots of money on house cleaning costs. Voila, okay? The baby mop, 2 tasks, 1 resource. Here's some other examples, obviously jokes. I don't know, probably none of you watch Seinfeld, but those of you who have, Antoine and I are of that generation that watch Seinfeld. Antoine, I don't know if you remember, but Kramer didn't understand, why can't he wash his vegetables while in the shower? So there's an example for you right there.
Yeah, that episode.
Yeah, it's a great episode. It's yet another one of their great episodes. This is actually a real product. So what do you do when you go to the beach? So, you know, what do you do with your money? I mean, most of you are Brazilian. I've been to Brazil many times. You know, you go to the beach in Rio, and if you bring money to the beach in Rio, what you're actually bringing is you're bringing a donation. You're just not sure to who, right? And so the question is, how do you solve that problem? Where I have these flip-flops, and these flip-flops have a sole. Well, why don't I give this sole a second job? It's going to be a little pocket where I can put my money. And by the way, sometimes I'm going to want beer on the beach, and I'm not going to have a bottle opener. So why not put a bottle opener on the sole also? By the way, I have these flip-flops. I once showed this to an executive group here at Stanford. Next day, a guy comes with a box, hands it to me. I open it up. It's those flip-flops, and he says, "My wife is the product manager for this product." And so sometimes I make a snarky comment about these flip-flops, and that situation taught me, don't make snarky comments because you never know who's there. I once made a snarky comment about Brazilian banking, and I had a couple of Brazilian banking family heirs in the classroom, and I had no idea. So I learned my lesson. I'm already putting up a window. Why not give that window solar capabilities, right? It's already there. Let's give it a second job. Do you know where? I mean, all of you remember car antennas, right? Car antennas. Where did they go? They went into the rear window defogger. I'm already putting metal filament in there. Why not give that metal filament a second job? Okay. Another example is beer. None of us like our beer hot or warm, and we also don't like the feeling of our hand getting too cold, right? And so this is a beer label that Coors developed that has like, it's a little padded, it's an insulator, right? So we've given this label 2 jobs. So you say to me, wow, Levav, who gives a shit? That's like just a beer label. Who cares? That's not a big deal. That's not money. You know, we're building unicorns. I have news for you, all you unicorn builders. If you have a 0.1% shift in the market share of Coors beer, that is the value of most VC portfolios and then some, because beer is so massive. Beer is as popular as oxygen. And so understand that in those markets that are super saturated, what you're doing is you have to create incremental innovations to be able to stay relevant. Okay, and so what you'll notice is I have examples of both incremental and disruptive innovations. Okay, and the reason I have that because also some of you are going to have to make some incremental innovations and versions over time. Not everything you do is going to be so massive in every step. More examples of beer. Why buy a 6-pack of beer and then put it in a cooler? Why not buy a box that has insulated properties that I can just throw ice in and now it's both the beer packaging and my cooler, right? 2 jobs, 1 resource. Sometimes what you do is you give something that's external to your product a second job. Okay, so what's going on in this photograph? Somebody tell me. And I'm gonna call on Rodolfo Bizzinotto, and the reason I'm calling on him is because he said the word dopamine, and that sounds scientific. So now let's see what he thinks.
Okay, I believe that the cup that they made, it has like a place in order to put your cell phone. It's kind of weird. I don't know why.
Why would they do that? Why do you think they would do that?
Because you cannot put your glass down without the phone, right?
Yeah, so what exactly right, because when you walk into bars in basically anywhere around the world, this is how people are. Right? And so what this does essentially is it makes you get the hell off your phone when you're out with your friends. Okay? But what I'm doing is now the bottom of the glass, a chunk of it has been outsourced to something else, specifically to my phone. Okay, this is obviously a very esoteric product. Here's a product that's less esoteric. Let's think about what mouthwash is. So mouthwash is liquid and chemicals mixed in. And so it comes in a bottle. The problem with it is that you can't go out to the club. You know, I can't go to Villa Mix with a bottle of mouthwash in my pocket because people are going to cast aspersions about me, right? So that's a problem. So what do? Well, wait a second. Where does mouthwash go? It goes in my mouth. What do I have in my mouth? And don't say teeth.
Saliva.
Saliva. Ah, wait a second. Why don't we give the saliva a second job? And what we're going to do is we're going to make the saliva to be the solute, right? No, the solvent for the chemicals. And I'm going to put those chemicals on this very, very thin sheet. And now what I can do is I can put this tiny little, I have this kind of set of tiny little sheets, and it's like a little thing that kind of is this big. I put it in my pocket and I can have fresh breath all night long, right? And I achieve that by outsourcing. Okay, this is actually a major, if you think about the world of mouthwash, which I bet you don't think about a lot, right? Because it's not technology. But guess what? Before we get the technology, we need to keep our teeth healthy. Okay, you know, this is a really major innovation there. It's probably the first major innovation in mouthwash, probably in 50 years. This is a Chilean product. It's a Chilean bicycle. Gonzalo, well, no, Gonzalo's not Chilean. He spent time in Chile, but there may be a Chilean or two on here. And so this is a Chilean bike. They call themselves the safest bike in the world. What they've done is they've said, wait a second. They've done now the opposite. They say, wait, I had a bike and I had a lock. Why don't I insource the lock into something on the bike? And now basically what they did is they gave the seat a second job. Okay, they gave the seat a second job. It's both a seat and a lock. Now I don't have to carry a lock around. All right, so these are going to be your instructions. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send a version of these slides with the instructions just so you have them for posterity. But basically, the way it works is that just like with subtraction, I write down all the components of the things that I make. Okay, and I identify their function. Here, what I'm going to do also is I'm going to write a list of all the things that come into contact with my product, but that I don't make, but they come into contact with my product. So if I go back to Lucas's example of Revello, if Revello's model is that they're basically a marketplace, right? So there's skills providers, and then there's HR or people looking for jobs, right? The people that come into contact with their software are the skills content is external to Revello, but comes into contact with Revello. Do you understand? Right. So here's my iPhone. Right. It's my iPhone. This cover is not made by Apple, but it comes into contact with my phone. Okay. So you're going to make a list also of the external features. And in fact, what you should do, what I would encourage you to do, is have a running list of your internal components and the external components. Just have a running list sitting on a board in your company, because all the templates that I'm going to show you are all about manipulating those different things. And then what you do is you say, well, wait a second, which can one of the functions that's currently being fulfilled by something that's internal that I make, can it be transferred to something that's external? So like the mouthwash. I transferred the water, I transferred it out to the saliva. Or is there something that's external that could be fulfilled by something that's internal, like with a lock in a bike? Okay, so you have kind of two avenues to go, and then you ask yourself, okay, what needs are met by this idea? Okay, and what you'll find, we don't have the time to do it, we really don't have the time to do it, is that you'll generate 10 ideas in 10 minutes. And about 3 of those will be really, really good ideas. And if you try to do that just with a blank whiteboard, the chances of you coming anywhere near that are exactly 0. Okay? I'll bet you're funding. That it would be exactly 0. All right. I got to really hustle. So I'm going to speed through, because there's another template I really want you to see. Next template is called the division template. Here what I do is I separate components. I either physically cut them or I separate them by functionality. This is something that all Brazilians are familiar with, because every Brazilian has had their car radio stolen. It's a rite of passage. If your car radio hasn't been stolen, it must be that your car radio is really, really shitty, because they'll take anything. And so here, how do you make a safer car radio? Well, let's just cut the plate off. So I create an innovation, I meet a new need, actually by taking something and cutting it, applying scissors to it. Okay, sometimes, here's another example. These pants are horrible, but you can make them long pants or short pants. These are good for the Bay Area where I live here in Antoine. Basically, it's cold in the morning, warm in the afternoon, and cold at night again. I could be wearing the same pair of pants, put them on, take them off, zip them on. I'll never do it because it's heinous, but in theory. Let me skip this example. Here's what's called a functional division, right? What you see, the top picture is how hi-fi systems used to be, and then manufacturers said, wait a second, why should I force people to have specific features? Let them customize. Okay, so you create innovation actually by taking something and cutting it, not adding. I'm actually cutting it to component pieces. Okay, here's another one. This is a massive innovation in carpets. Carpets used to come in gigantic rolls. They're very expensive to transport, very problematic to lay down. Now they come in squares. Okay, if I stain one of the squares, I can just remove a square. Transporting it is easy. Cutting it is easy. Managing it is easy, right? Innovation that came actually from cutting something, taking something and cutting it into 2 parts, or 3 parts, or 10 parts, or whatever number of parts. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to think about your own products and say, okay, what can I do? Where can I apply the proverbial scissors and create something new and different? Okay, these are your instructions. Again, we're going to write down the components. We're going to identify the function of the component. And then we're going to divide the product into component parts and see what we get. Okay, and what you'll notice with this is that what I'm trying to do for you is I'm trying to turn the creative idea generation process into a mechanical process, right? Where if, as long as you generate a good list of internal components and external components, the idea is basically, it's almost like a machine could do it. You could literally stick it in a spreadsheet and just have it sort things for you. That doesn't mean you're less imaginative. It just means that you're smarter about your creative ideation process. And by the way, it's only part of the game, because you still have to. We still need your judgment on whether or not an idea is good. That's the first thing, and then you obviously have to execute on it. This just makes a part of your job just much more efficient. Okay, so now we did division. If we have division, we're obviously going to have multiplication, right? So what I do with multiplication is I take a component and I multiply it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, but each time with a twist, right? You see these toilets here, it looks like it's just a bunch of toilet seats. No, it's a toilet seats with different labels. One for each different kind of butt in the family, all right? Here's another example that you're all familiar with. What's the razor blade industry, disposable razor blade? We used to have 1 blade. Then Gillette came and had the Mach razor, 2 blades. Then they had the Mach 3 razor, 3 blades. But each blade is at a slightly different angle. So what meat does that meet? That gets Lucas's head nice and smooth, because one blade lifts and the other blade cuts. And then Schick came in and said, okay, Gillette, you got Trace, I got Quattro, right? And so then Gillette said, the hell with your Quattro, I got Cinco, 5 blades. And now they run out of space, so now they start having like vibrating heads and different colors and all that kind of stuff. But that's just innovation through multiplication. Each time something slightly different. Okay, here's another example. Double trash cans. One is for trash, one is for recycling. Believe it or not, this invention made recycling take off in this country. Why? Because back in the day, what counties used to do is they give you these big blue bins that you were supposed to leave in your kitchen, and that's where you would put your recyclables and take them out once a week. But the big blue bins were really ugly. They chose the ugliest blue that you could possibly choose. I mean, they really optimized for ugly. And so you would take these, so you would leave it out in your garage. Now, what happens if it's out in your garage? You don't remember to recycle. Oh, but wait a second. What if I just multiply the trash can, but give it with a slight change? One is for trash, one is for recycling. And now what I've made a process that was otherwise complicated, I've made it super simple. Okay, so innovation from multiplication. The instructions I will send to you, but basically you get the point. Once you have your list of internal components, just take one, multiply it with a twist, see what happens. Some of the innovations will be incremental, some of the innovations will be disruptive. Okay? Don't think that you can live just in a world of disruptive innovation. Okay, you're going to have to, over time, as you capture more market share, you're going to have to stay relevant by making incremental changes and improvements. Okay, last template in the last 6 minutes that I have. We'll see how it works. Products have attributes, okay? And markets have attributes. And those attributes sometimes are related to each other and sometimes are unrelated to each other. What we do in attribute dependency is we either add relationships or remove relationships. And in that way, it's kind of related to subtraction. What do I mean? Beer. Normally, the label on a beer bottle is the same color regardless of the temperature of the beer. Coors developed a label that changes colors depending on the temperature of the beer. You're either cold or super cold. Okay, so for those of you who are engineers and are graphically inclined, voila. Temperature remains constant, changes, color remains constant. That's when there's no dependency between the attributes. When you create a dependency between the attributes, right, temperature reaches a certain threshold, color changes. That's what attribute dependency is. Sometimes you go from the left hand of the screen to the right, and sometimes if the current state is the one on the right-hand side, you may go to the left. Okay, I'll show you examples of both, including some dramatic examples that you've heard of. Okay, this is normally when you go to the gym. Well, let me say something differently. One of the things that these templates are really nice for is that they allow you to sort of more easily come up with business model innovations. And if you think about it, a lot of the best innovations, the most successful companies that you've heard of, particularly in the tech space, come from business model innovations. And so this is a gym that actually charges you more if you don't show up. Normally, there's no relation. You pay a monthly fee to the gym regardless of how many times you go. So there's no relationship between what you pay and how much you use. Here, there is a relationship, but the relationship is in the opposite direction of what you would expect. And in doing that, it basically creates a cost for not showing up. And so therefore you're more likely to stay in shape. Okay, this is one of my favorite examples, right? Those of you who've worked at Microsoft know that at Microsoft, at least in all the offices I've been to, there's a sign by the paper towel dispenser that says, you know, please mind the planet, don't use a lot of paper towels, and so on and so forth. And every time you see that sign, you're like, just keep pulling more paper towels out. Because it just, you know, it's like, it feels restricting and you don't like it. Or in some places, like in airports, like the one in San Francisco airport, you put your hand under the automatic dispenser and they'll dispense like 3 inches of paper. And you just have to keep standing there and you're like ripping it and you're ripping it and it's driving you crazy. Or what I can do is I can create a signal that relates my consumption with the effect that my consumption has. In all those other examples, there's no signal. Here, what they've done is they've created a signal. Every time I pull out a sheet of paper, I'm killing the planet more and more, right? So normally there's no dependency. Here I create a dependency and that dependency creates a message. It looks simple and trivial and it's so, so, so brilliant. And it's a simple application of the attribute dependency template. It's an application of a rule. That's all it is, okay? The internet, so many products. Normally towels are all one color and there's no relationship between what you use to dry yourself with and the side of the towel. Well, it turns out we can add a dependency. Yeah, that's right. I see people shaking their heads. You'll never dry yourselves the same again. You won't be able to look at your towels the same. A more serious example, one of the biggest problems in the medical space is that people don't adhere to their medication regimes. You know, how many of you have had antibiotics treatments that you were supposed to take for a week and you didn't take all the pills? 100% of you have done that. 100%. Anyone who hasn't just doesn't remember that they screwed up, right? Normally the pill container is the same color no matter how full it is. This is a pill container that changes colors depending on how full it is. And by doing that, it's signaling to you, hey, you got to take the pill, right? So added a dependency to create a benefit. Okay, toothpaste, same toothpaste, morning, night, middle of the day, middle of the night, doesn't matter. P&G said, well, wait a second, let's create a dependency. Let's make toothpaste for the morning and toothpaste for the night. They made $2 billion off this nonsense. Okay, normally there's no dependency. They created a dependency between the time of day attribute and the type of paste and created a new product that way. Sometimes what you do is you remove a dependency. Whoops, I don't know why that got cut off, but you remove a dependency. This is an example of using this in a campaign. So normally, if you work for a car manufacturer, you get a special employee price, right? And so there's a dependency between your employment status and the price you pay for the car. What Ford did is they created this campaign where they said, you know what, everybody gets employee pricing, which is to say there's no dependency between where you work and the price that you're going to get. They removed that dependency. It was essentially a way to create a promotion. It was wildly successful. GM copied it. Okay, so you can also create innovation by removing dependencies that are out there. Let me give you an example. You may have heard of this company. Okay, no, Antoine hasn't heard of it. Antoine, that's because you have your own private limo that drives you around, man. And so I love seeing Antoine in his Maybach around Palo Alto.
Exactly.
Exactly, with the Princeton vanity plate. Uber is called Uber Technologies, and people think about Uber as a tech company. The fact of the matter is, all of you who are engineers and product people here know you could pay a Ukrainian guy $3,000, give him 5 days, and he will produce an app that gets a lot of the functionalities of what the Uber app does. Yes, doing it at scale is complicated as hell. I get it, but that's not what's innovative about Uber. What's innovative about Uber is this business. It's a business model innovation. The business model innovation starts and ends with attribute dependency template or an application of it. Let's think about the taxi cab market. You have cars, okay? In Brazil, they're white. They say taxi on them. You got a driver, and he's licensed to drive a taxi. In other words, to be able to drive a car, to be able to offer public transportation, individualized public transportation, I have to have a card that's specifically designated for it, and a guy who's driving it who's specifically designated to do that job in a car like that. Okay, so there's a dependency in the market between the type of car and what it can do, and the type of person and what car it can drive, and what kind of car he can drive or she can drive. What does Uber say? Uber says, no, why? Any car can be a taxi. Any driver can be a taxi driver. That's Uber, that's it. That's all of it in one sentence. What's Airbnb? There was a building, it said hotel. There was a manager, the hotelier. You wanted to stay somewhere, that's where you could go. Airbnb says, well, wait a second. Any building, any dwelling can serve as a hotel, and any person can be a hotelier. I had a dependency in the market. I removed that dependency and I created a brand new business model. Okay, that's all, people talk about the gig economy and the sharing economy, and then you have all these people for a while, they wanted to be the Uber of this, the Uber of La Croix cans, the Uber of, and they didn't understand that what it means to be the Uber of something. It means that you go to a market and you remove a dependency that's there, and by liberating that dependency, you can meet a different set of consumer needs. Okay, so this kind of technique can give you beer labels, which none of you are interested in, except for on Friday and Saturday nights. Okay, but it can also give you Uber and Airbnb and all these other kind of Uber-like companies, right? By saying, wait a second, if I just remove this dependency, voila, there I go, right? What is remote work? Removes the dependency between the employee and the location, right? Start looking around you. You're going to see that these templates are popping up everywhere. What was unique about the Apple products versus IBM at the time? Just subtraction. Just removed a bunch of stuff, right? What was Google? The very beginning of Google. So Antoine was an early employee of Google. I don't think this early, but maybe. But if you look at search engines in the 90s, they were basically like links after links after links, a whole big mess. What was Google? A rectangle. Subtraction. Okay? So how do we do attribute dependency? Wow, I don't really have time to talk about it. Well, let me tell you in one sec, and then I'll leave it mysterious. You have your list of internal and external components, right? Put the internal components in the columns and in the rows, and then below them in the rows, put the external components. Okay, so let's do an example for a second of like cell phones. Okay, so if I'm Apple, I make the ringtone, I make the ring volume, I make the speaker volume, I make the screen display, I make the vibrating mode, and so on. I put that in the columns and in the rows. And then I have ambient noise, signal strength, and users' calendars. Those are examples of things that come into contact with my phone, but I don't control them as Apple. And now all you do is you go square by square and either add a dependency or remove it. So let me give you an example. How many of you have had a phone ring in the middle of a meeting? Everybody. So imagine users' calendar and ringing volume were related to each other. Innovation, okay? How many of you have been in a club, okay, where you've missed a call because you didn't hear it? Oh wow, ambient noise, vibrating mode. Let's turn on vibrating mode when ambient noise is really high. Or ambient noise and speaker volume. Let's automatically turn up the speaker when ambient noise is high, okay? Or maybe I want to change my screen display to match as an extra signal with my ringing volume. And you could just go square by square by square by square and just create new things. And it's all systematic. And if we had the time, we would actually practice this and I would show you how to do it properly and it wouldn't make you feel like you're drinking water from a garden hose. But unfortunately, I don't have the time for it. 5 templates. Subtraction, useful for complex products or to control costs. Task unification also allows you to reduce complexity and also allows you to be able to create a cost advantage. Division and multiplication are typically for simpler quantitative improvements. And attribute dependency is useful generally, but it's more complex because you have to create that matrix. Right? And that matrix, if we actually did it, you would see it just takes a little bit more time and a little bit more doing. But at the core of this is internal feature, components, external components, and application of rule. Okay, and try it, and what you'll see is that you'll solve problems better, faster, more easily. And the other thing I encourage you to do is to look at your own products and say to yourself, wait a second, where did we implicitly use these templates already? And where could we do more of it? Or where do you use these templates and then you say to yourself, oh, okay, this is a point of differentiation for me. I didn't even realize that it was a point of differentiation because the entire market is going this way, but I subtracted something here. I didn't even realize I was doing it as a form of subtraction, and that actually creates a point of differentiation for me. Okay, so we're over, and I'm probably keeping you from hearing somebody really famous. And so, Antoine, thank you for the opportunity, and the Valor team, and good luck, and stay in touch. And I love Brazil, and hopefully see you there when, in 2097 when COVID is over.
Well, Jonathan, no, thank you. Thanks so much for your time. We definitely should have had 2 hours for this so we could have had more breakout sessions and so on. But what I encourage all of our companies to do is we'll send some, Jonathan will share the slides, and we'll share these templates for you. I encourage all of you to try this for your own companies. And then let's get back to Jonathan because he needs more software examples in his presentation going forward. So we'd love to have some of our companies put our examples in there.
It would be my pleasure.
Perfect. So that's our challenge as a team here, guys. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for your time. Really appreciate it. And we'll catch up soon. But if anyone has any comments or questions, you can channel it through me. I'll definitely pass it on to Jonathan. He's been a great mentor for us in looking at companies. He's known a lot of you, and so we'd love to keep those conversations going. So thanks to everybody for joining. Really appreciate it. Thanks again, Jonathan, for your time.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Anton, for the invite.
Great. Thank you. So good.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.